Lately, I've been playing a lot of Hitman, specifically Hitman World of Assassination. This is kind of closely aligned with the most recent 2024 World Chess Championships, and it kind of has made me hyper aware of chess. And when I've been walking around the world of Hitman, I've noticed that, man, there sure are a lot of chessboards in this world, spread across all sorts of different maps. Now, if you are a active Hitman player, there are probably two chessboards that come to mind when you think of this game, and we'll get to those later. But in walking around and seeing all these chessboards and kind of briefly glancing over at them, it's got me thinking, it's got me wondering, do these chessboards make any sense? Are there an accurate amount of pieces on the board? Does it seem like a board that could occur in a real game? Is it a winning position for either of the teams, or is it kind of just random pieces slapped on the board just as like a set dressing thing, right? Most of the time, they're just something that you're supposed to see in your peripheral vision and not really stop and think about it. But that's what we're going to do in this video. We are going to stop and think about it. We're going to look at all the chessboards. We're going to find every chessboard in this game, and we're going to analyze them to see if they make any sense. First up is here in Colombia. When we navigate over to the town square, there is a nice little game of chess happening between these two. This is a really nice place for a game of chess. Hey, the center of the town, you know, there's an opportunity where you and others can play a nice concert up here, so they can do that to the backing of some nice music. A couple shops nearby. If you're feeling like you need to get rehydrated, head over here, grab a nice apricot, maybe some cake, and perhaps a drink. So it's a really nice place, and this one is cool. Like, this actually is a game where two people are currently playing a game of chess. This bench is like really far back from the table. Like, that person's gonna have to get up and like stand up in order to move a piece at any given time. But, you know, at a glance, this chessboard, take a look at it. It kind of seems to make a lot of sense. It looks like we have a couple like castled sort of positions. There's an accurate-ish amount of pieces on the board. So we will stick this into a chess engine later, and we'll see if this board actually makes any sense. But at a glance, I think it really does seem to appear to make a lot of sense. We can even sit here and just kind of watch their game. Now, I don't know how long I want to sit here, but I guarantee you that we could sit here all day long and they would never actually make a move. So they're really in a deep think on this as to, I don't know whose turn it is, but they're really, oh, he was thinking about it. He was thinking about making a move, but then he goes right back for the hand on the chin. And in reality, he will never actually make a move. Next up is here in the Isle of Sgale. This is a crazy place to play a game of chess. Think about the just over, I guess the view is not so great here. You just have some military dudes on a castle wall. But in theory, this is a really beautiful, classy place. You know, Hitman's a game chocked full of very classy locations. And look at this. We have a nice board position here set on the center of this table. Once again, chairs are not really particularly close to the board game, so it might just be more of a backup dressing. You know, this map is kind of like a culty, weird situation. And this game is a bit different. We can see that there's no one actually playing this game of chess here. This was just purely set dressing, or it's a game that was abandoned halfway through. But if you look closely here, what you'll notice is that this appears to be the exact same set of pieces in the exact same places as Colombia, as the map we were just on. And, you know, quick spoiler alert for the rest of this video, but we're going to find that almost every chessboard in the game is exactly this one, which makes a lot of sense. You know, when there's someone at IOI who's putting the art together for this game, and they're making like an art asset for a chessboard that the level designers or environment artists can later go stick around in the level, it doesn't really make sense to make like chessboard as one JPEG, you know, white pawn as another JPEG, and then have every time that they want to put it down make up a position. That's a lot of work. It makes more sense to just kind of have one static art asset that they can lump down on any given level. So we're going to see this trend occur, but then there are a couple subversions of that as well. So that is this board here in Sagale. Here we are in Hokkaido, Japan. And in the guard's security office here, there is another game of chess being played here. Once again, exact same position. I really like the placement of this one. I feel like guards' quarters are typically places where, I don't know, you're going to have your like security footage somewhere. You got all these computers and all these screens and all these different things. But I think it's kind of nice to just have something a little more chill. You know, look at this. They have like a teapot, a couple cups of tea next to this game. It seems like a really nice place to play a game of chess. There's even like a nice light aiming down on the table. So it's kind of a cozy vibe given how harsh the rest of the design of this room is. And, this one doesn't have active players on it, but I think that kind of makes sense. Only people who are wearing a security office can get in this room because of the way the key cards work on this map. And so the way I like to think about it is that there's one guy who's on his shift, he's doing his rounds around the facility. He'll come by and notice, oh, it's my turn. I'll make a move. And then maybe this guy is his opposition. So whenever he has a minute free, he'll come by and make a move. And, maybe it takes a shift or multiple shifts in order for the game to finish. But still, they can kind of just enjoy this game over the course of several days or hours. And like this guy's a perfect example of that. This guard kind of patrols in and out of this room back and forth. So even though he doesn't ever actually stop and move a piece on the board, it kind of seems like something that he could do. And that is all until I knock these guards out, which I very often do when I need to get in this room and get some stuff done. Next up, here we are in Haven Island. This might not look very familiar, but this is the underground secret base underneath the mansion. And very similar to Hokkaido, in the kind of staff break room, we have another game of chess here. This guy does not look like he's actively engaging in the game. He's relaxing hard with his glass of milk there. We got a couple cups of coffee. And I feel like this could be a similar situation to Hokkaido, where you have two people who are on the job technically, but on their break, or every once in a while they'll come by and make a move on this table. And it's in this moment that, if you haven't thought about it yet, while this game, once again, exact same position, looks pretty realistic, one thing that they definitely didn't go the extra mile to make the realism of this game accurate is that you'll notice that, okay, about half the pieces have been captured in this game, right? It looks like, I don't know, maybe 50% of the pieces are still on the board. But what happened to the other 50%? Where are the other pieces? Where are the pieces that have been captured? They aren't placed on the side like they typically are. I don't know, maybe they're edible chess pieces, and once you capture one, you get to eat it like a little advent calendar of chess. But yeah, that's a really odd detail here, and there actually are a couple exceptions to this that I've noticed. Even back on Columbia, there's a couple pieces on the side, but never have I noticed there being the entire set of accurate chess pieces on the side of the board. So kind of a funny detail that, yeah, in passing you might not notice, but when you stop to think, it really makes you question the logic of this board and if this was ever actually a real game that would have been played by the people in these locations. All right, we're back in the freelancer's safe house now. And this is one of the two locations that I mentioned at the top of the video that people might be familiar or remembering a board here. Here's one of them. This is in 47's living room. And this is just one of the options. You can change this table around decoration when you level up and stuff. But this is one of the locations in which there'll be a chessboard here on the corner. Now, this is not actually the one that I was thinking of. In fact, there is one that's even more common for anyone who is a frequent Hitman freelancer player. You will be very familiar with this particular loading screen, this 2-frame loading screen that shows a chessboard from two separate angles, in which 47 is clearly playing a game of chess against like an engine. He's got it pulled up on his computer, and he's making a move, then he puts that move into the computer picks a move, and he recites it onto his board. So let's follow this tangent for a little bit and check out this particular board from Hitman Freelancer. All right, here we are with the chess position from the Freelancer loading screen. I was not able to determine if this is a real game that has existed in history, but we're still going to take a look at it anyway and see what we can find out about it. Big disclaimer here, I'm not good at chess. In fact, I would say that I'm bad at chess. But here we are. I'm going to do the best I can analyzing this position. I do love the game of chess. I love to analyze games, look at games, watch analysis from smarter players than myself. But in this case, this position is fairly simple-ish, so I think I can do a decent job. And then we'll take a look at some other positions later on in the video. So in this position, it's a fairly simplified location. As we can tell, there's only 5 pieces on the board at this point. Here's where we run into an issue. We don't know whose turn it is when we look at a chessboard from this game because no pieces ever actually get moved, so at best we can estimate. I actually do think here we can determine whose turn it is because if we look at the loading screen in-game, presumably 47 is playing this game against the chess engine. He's making a move, and then he pops that move into the laptop in front of him in the computer, and then it spits back a move at him. He moves that piece, and then we move on and so forth. In the positioning where he's sitting, it looks like he's playing as black because we have the letters are kind of going the opposite way, the numbers, of course, the opposite way as well. So it seems like he's playing as black, and obviously it wouldn't be the computer taking a long time to think about a move. So presumably it's his turn as black, and he's considering what move he wants to make. So we will look at both variations, but I do think there's a good chance that it is black's turn in the game that we are looking at here. So as black in this position, we have the king over here on a4, who can currently target and take out this pawn, who is heading all the way up here, right, to go promote. And then the other pawn's in the exact same position. So that's kind of our immediate threats, whereas the white king's not immediately threatening anything. So this is kind of already immediately an interesting decision, at least for me as a low-level chess player. So obviously there's a couple options here. The king could just go ahead and capture this white pawn, but then your knight is going to fall, and then it's game over for black, right? Because white, whatever you do as black, let's say you move your king, pawn moves up, you move your king again. White's going to go up here and promote, get to a queen. You're done for as long as the player in white knows how to get a checkmate with a queen and a king. When I look at this position, I don't really see a way forward for black to be able to stop both of these pawns at the same time. I think they're just spread a little bit too thin. So let's look at a position here. Let's say you first off kick your knight out of that spot to save him from the white pawn. And then white pushes this pawn. Knight would have to move up here because the king's just not going to be able to stop that pawn. So let's instead move the knight over here to prevent that white pawn from moving forward. But now white could just go over here and kick this one forward. And what do? I feel like the knight is kind of awkwardly placed where, okay, you move back here to stop that pawn from advancing, but now this one can just advance. And then if you move anywhere else, if you can't quite move forward, I guess you could move up here. Then this pawn can't advance, but then this one can just advance. And now there isn't really a way for you to stop this pawn from getting to the end and promoting. And then I feel like you're kind of just done for. So I feel like this is a winning position for white, and maybe that's why 47 is in such a deep think here, and similar to me here. I don't really think there's a way out of this hole. I think you're kind of screwed. And then if we consider it from the other perspective that it is white's turn, I think that this is pretty clear cut, right? If you're white here, you take the knight, black's going to go ahead and take your pawn, but then you just go ahead and advance. You get a queen, and then you can lock it down with a clear endgame there. So I think the moral of the story here is that black is kind of screwed. This is going to be a losing game, and presumably if that is 47, he is going to lose this match. He is not going to beat the engine this time around. A valiant effort, but not good enough. He's better at assassination than he is at playing chess. So that board from the freelancer loading screen is not actually this board, and it doesn't even look like it's 47 playing in the same location. But this is a particularly funny one because this is his high security hidden safe house. I don't really picture him ever having people over to play a game, and so I guess this is maybe one of the locations where he'd set up his laptop and play against the computer. A beautiful view. I would love to play chess right here. We are here in Germany now for the next board, which is funnily enough in a room that has kind of a chessboard-like flooring to it. And you can see here it is on the table. Ignore the bodies on the ground. This is a very high security area, so I maybe had to knock some particular people out to get in here, which is funnily enough a theme. I feel like a lot of the chessboards in this game are actually in very high security areas that require disguises or really sneaky play in order to get into as 47. And check out this guy out, by the way. When I knocked him out, he just pulled a total Karen move here and like dislocated his shoulder to make it seem like it was worse than it was. I just hit him in the face with like a pop can. Not a big deal. You can actually get dressed up as this guy. This is the club owner. Uh, so now I'm dressed up as the club owner. I'm sure there's a fun opportunity tied to that. But once again, here is the chessboard. And this one is kind of what I just mentioned, where there actually are a couple pieces, captured pieces on the side of the board. There's a white queen and a white rook placed on the side. So those, help fill out the scene a little bit. But of course, we're still missing a lot of pieces. Otherwise, this is the exact same board that we've seen many times at this point. Much like Germany, we have another map here just chocked full of criminals. This is in Colorado, which is, funnily enough, like the least classy map. Hitman is a game filled with very classy, beautiful locations. This map is kind of the least pretty one in general, but if there is one classy place, it would be this room here, which is kind of one of the targets. I think, what's his name? I think it's maybe this guy, Sean Rose. He kind of patrols this building, and he might come in this room. I forget. Maybe I knocked him out. But either way, this is kind of his head office here. And kind of in the center here is a chessboard as well. So this is something I find kind of funny. Just like this is a place where tons of guns and crime and conspiracies, and like you as a citizen cannot even walk into this place. You will get gunned down instantly. But still, like in the boss's room, he just like has a board of chess and he's playing a game every once in a while. It just kind of totally goes against the stereotype. But I guess that's one of the beautiful things about chess, that it is a game for all walks of life. You can play it as a kid, as an elderly person. You can play it in any sort of demographic. You can even play it across language barriers. I have a fond memory of a few years ago when I was in India. And I was on a hike with some friends, and along the trail there was this little shack where a man had set this up, and he was selling snacks and drinks. And so we stopped by for a little break there, get some refreshments. And I noticed in his shack he had a chessboard. And even though he did not speak a word of English and I did not speak a word of whatever Indian language he spoke, we were still able to communicate, and I was able to challenge him to a game of chess. And we played a game of chess, even though we couldn't speak the same language, and it's a very cherished memory of mine. I did lose that game, to be clear, just to put that out there, but it was still a really great thing, and so that kind of shows that, even criminals, in this case, can enjoy a game of chess. This is a funny location again for me. Once again, when we look at this position, like, who is playing in this? Oh, shit. There is a enforcer that just walked in the room. I did not think about that. But the based on where these like couches are positioned, if anyone was to sit across from this game of chess, it doesn't really make any sense. And these are like very big, presumably heavy chairs. Like you're not gonna like move this chair over to play a game of chess. So it's kind of a funny, weird place. And there's not a single other thing on this table. This feels like one of those locations they often go above and beyond to like fill in the set dressing. But like this very important looking table just has nothing but one chessboard on it. It's kind of a funny thing. We are now in Alexa Carlisle's office in Dartmoor, which is probably the classiest location in all of Hitman. So it's not surprising that there is a chessboard here. I feel like this is, even though this is a position in which there is actually a chessboard set up and it appears that a game is being played, I kind of feel like this is the house filled with rich people that would just like have a fancy chessboard that costs $10,000 just as set dressing, and no one would ever actually play it. Made as like a one of a kind thing by a artist. Now this one gets me really excited in a very nerdy way. Of course, that's the whole premise of this video. But I came through here and I was looking at this board, and if we just take a quick glance at it, if we like zoom in here, I came in here, I noticed like, wait, there is actually a slightly different position here than the other games that we've seen, because there is like an extra piece on the board, and it's kind of weirdly like not in the center of a square, it's kind of in the corner, And I was looking at it, I'm like, this kind of looks like a bishop or like a pawn, but like that's a bishop, that's a pawn. It's a little bit different than that. So I actually had to come back to the level, grab a sniper, and with a scope on it to be able to zoom in and look at this. And check it out. There's just an extra piece that is clearly not a bishop, clearly not a pawn, on the board here in a weird position. And it took me a bit to figure out what it is, and I realized that it's a queen. Because here's the black queen, here's the white queen, they're right next to each other, but this white queen is just like clipped through the board. This is, as far as I know, the only location in the game where this is the case. And you can see there's like a rook over here as well. So once again, this is a position where they took the board, slapped it down, and then took a couple of those extra pieces to kind of fill in the background. But then they totally just put it in a weird place. So this does technically change the actual chess game quite a bit. And when we get to the evaluation and analysis of this game, we will take a look at how this variation, I'll call it the Dartmoor variation, changes this whole board position. But that is a very funny little detail to me that, yeah, if you're walking by this map, walking through, you're going to spend a lot of time here. This is, of course, where one of the main targets comes. You would probably never notice something like that, but until you take out a sniper scope and take a look at it, you can see what exactly is going on beneath the surface. Here is another one of my favorite chessboards in this game. This is once again in the town center of Ambrose Island. Right in front of Farah's here, which is kind of the main spot in this town. Place to stop, get some food and drink, do a slapping competition. This is clearly a place full of play because we have some chess boards. We'll go check out. There is the slapping competition. There's even like people playing poker nearby. There's like a projection room up there, people watching a movie. So just a very lively place. And up here we have not one, but two chessboards right next to each other. Look at that. I believe this is one of the starting locations you can get, would be like starting as Blent in here. And this is hilarious because you have 47 like playing a game of chess, and we'll see that every once in a while he'll like move his hand to pretend that he's about to make a move, but then he doesn't, because of course he's just blending in. That was a very funny little hand position that he just did there. So what's funny about this to me is that, of course, these chessboards are always just supposed to be something in the peripheral vision. You're never really supposed to look at them too closely. But if there's any point you're going to look at the chessboards closely, it might be here because they are no less than like 2 meters apart from each other. And it's funny because, of course, this is still the same chessboards that we have seen many times before. And so you think that if there would be any point where they would switch it up and change the chessboard position just because it might look kind of weird, it would be this, because people might actually notice that the fact that, wow, why is there the exact same game of chess being played right next to each other? And I think they did a really funny little clever thing here where they, on this side of the table, it's like black on the left, white on the right. And then on here, in this game, it's the opposite, where they put white on the left, black on the right. And so just kind of one of those things where at a glance, oh yeah, these look like different games of chess. But once again, if you stop and look closely, you will notice, oh, I've angered this guy. Sorry, dude. I was just looking at your game of chess. It's a beautiful match that you're playing. Yes, I've seen the exact same match many times before, but that guy's enjoying some ramen. This guy's really just focused all in on the game. And even further than this, if we go up these stairs over here, past these guards, past this chef, we will see a third game of chess being played. And this one actually is, funnily enough, has the couple pieces on the side of it, couple captured pieces on the side. But once again, this is the exact same position that we have seen, I don't know, 8 times now. This is the projection room up here that I was talking about. But I really like this. Once again, look at that. Guy was about to make a move, but he doesn't do it because the chess pieces don't move at all. But I love that Ambrose is just a place where 3 chessboards within pretty much one vision cone of each other. That's going to take us to the last chessboard location in the game that I am aware of. And it is possible that I missed some. There are some huge maps like Mumbai, India. Would not surprise me if there's one hidden in there. Marrakesh. I did look around, but I could not find any there. But this is the other one, the second one of that freelancer location that I feel like if you are a frequent Hitman player, you very likely are aware of this. And maybe I've been screaming at this video the whole time that I didn't start with this, considering that this is kind of the first map. This is one of the training missions, the ICA test facility. This is technically kind of like a tutorial level. And the reason I kind of saved this till last is because there's a lot more going on with this zone than anything else. Once again, it is the same chessboard position, but with a couple exceptions. And so the funny thing with this is there is actually this whole mission and opportunity is based around assassinating this guy named Jasper Knight. Very on the nose that his name is Jasper Knight. And what he'll do is he'll walk around this room. He's a chess player or something like that. And there's actually a chessboard here that you can tamper with. You can move two of the pieces along. So if we look really closely here, what we see is that this is the exact same chessboard that we've seen many times before, but with the white rook and white queen that in many times we saw on the side of the board as captured pieces, they are actually placed on this board, and you as 47 can make a move. You can either move the queen to g3, so we're assuming it's white's turn here, or we can move the rook to f8. And that's part of an opportunity here where you can do one move, which we'll start with this. If you move the rook to f8, which first of all, it's glitched out. It's like already on f8. It's clipped to the board, and then you can like move it again. And then Jasper will come by, and he'll see the move that you made. And he'll say, no, that's a bad move. That is a blunder. And he'll move the rook back to... I mean, technically, it was already there clipping through the table, at least in my glitched out save here that I've loaded up. But he will move the piece back, saying that that was a bad move. That was a blunder, which we'll take a look at that exact move later on in the analysis part. The other option you have is to move the queen to g3. So we can click the button and we can move the queen to g3. Now, of course, it's still glitched, and the rook is also currently where it said it wasn't supposed to be. So once again, could just be bugged out, could be glitched, who really knows. And when Jasper comes by to look at this, if you haven't already, this will pop a new challenge. He says, yes, just the move I was contemplating. So he kind of thanks you for giving him an idea of the proper chess move to make. And that will lead to, I suppose, a winning position. Now, it's kind of a funny move because it's moving the queen. It's not... You would think that if they're like putting a little chess puzzle in the game here, that what they would instead do is make like the move that you're making as a player. Like one should be the blunder, like the rook blunder thing. But then the other should be like maybe a checkmate, just like ending the game. But instead it just like puts white in a better position. We will take a look at that in the analysis coming up here. But with that, those are all of the chessboards in the game that I am aware of. And now what we're going to do is we're going to stick this complicated one game, but then it has a couple variations to it. We're going to stick that into a chess engine. We're going to take a look at it and see what we can find. Is this an actual position that exists, or is it just a funny little set of pieces that IOI decided to put down, presumably to set up this one level, but then stick it into other levels as just kind of set dressing going backwards? All right, so I have set up the position here from the ICA final test mission, which, as I mentioned, is very similar to the board that we'll get from all the other games across the various maps. The exception from those games is going to be that you're going to take this rook out and this queen. These two pieces are going to be just removed from the game, and then otherwise it's going to be the exact same. And then we have the Dartmoor variation. We'll get to that a bit later on. Now, as it turns out, in my research of this video, I stumbled along something very interesting, which is that this position, this exact position we're looking at here, is in fact a real position that existed in a very famous game of chess. Shoutouts to a thread that occurred back in 2016 when this mission was first added to Hitman 2016 at that point in time, where someone posted a thread with a screenshot of this game and asked, hey, is this a real game? Is this real? Is this legit? Is this a position that could have existed? Very similar situation to what we have here. And then someone responded that, yes, this is in fact a real game that happened between Robert Fischer and Boris Spassky back in 1972, World Chess Championships, round 6, game 6, which was a great get-out-jail free card for me here because with that earlier freelancer position, not too bad. I could take a look at it and kind of figure it out, but this is a lot more complicated. There's a lot more going on here. And so what I can do now is I can just link a couple videos of analysis that much better players than me have done in this game because this is a famous game. And then there's, of course, a point where those analysis are going to get to this exact move. And then Fischer, in this case, playing white, is going to make the correct move or the move that in the game is kind of the solution to the chess puzzle. So it's really cool. We will still take a look at this, of course, but I think it's really interesting that this was modeled off of a real game and just kind of a funny game to pick. Seems like a bit of a deep cut. Maybe this is one of the most famous games of all time. I'm not too sure, but it seems like a bit of a deep cut. Going back to the 70s for this one. So I don't know. I think that's a really, really cool thing. And so the analysis of this game has been done before by people who are much better than me, but we can still take a look at it. And of course, there are some variations that don't appear in that World Chess Championship match, because obviously they don't redo it with removing 2 pieces and see how would that have played out. This is also a situation where we can look at it and say, okay, we know whose turn it is in this game, because it is a historical match, and in this, our character of, what was his name, Kim Knight, something like that, he is about to make a move as white, and that's what you're helping him find, the kind of brilliant move in this situation. So in the game, the 2 options are, you can move your rook up here to f8, or you can move your queen over here 1 slot over to g3. Now, if you move your knight up here, that's a really bad move, because you have 2 options as black. One, you can recapture with the knight, and then obviously if the rook were to go in here, well, now you're just kind of screwed. So you're losing a lot of material here. Not a good position to have. It's just throwing away a rook for no good reason whatsoever. Whereas if you move the queen over here, it's funny, like from the analysis that I've listened to try and understand a better understanding of this particular game and what happened here, it's not even so much that there's an immediate attack from the queen that can be done here, because obviously if you move the queen up here next, depending on what black does, it's not like your rooks are on that same file. They can't really just help lock it down, and the bishop's kind of got his eyes a little bit too far. He's got his eyes over here. But what it does is it allows a opening of the position through a pawn movement. So we will look at a particular set of moves after, but when you move the queen over here, one, it gets her in a position to strike, because obviously she's not going to be able to hit this pawn. If she hits this pawn, she's just going to get recaptured by this guy over here, but it allows this pawn to crack open the position by moving forward, and eventually we're going to break down this king side. And when we break down the king side, I mean, look at these black rooks. They're over here. I don't know, they're having a play date. They're doing nothing at all to help out the position. The queen, somewhat in play. She's doing something or other, but like, you got the bishop. He's aiming his eyes down this. You got the rooks, both looking to connect over here. So if we open up this king position, white is ready to strike with a lot more options than black has in this position. And so white would be able to find a checkmate with some position. And we're kind of locked over here. And of course, the white king is also on this side, so he remains safe as we move the rest of these pieces up. Let's take a look at the moves from the game. So to get us into the position that is set up in Hitman, it was a queen move back to d8, and that sets us up in the exact position that we have in game. And so as I mentioned, a good spot to go here is for the queen to shift over onto g3 and kind of get out of the way of that pawn. Black is going to do a lot of shuffling here, as white is kind of slowly amping up for some bigger attacks. So we get the pawn moved up. The rooks get both on the seventh rank here. Pawn moves forward, gets right in the rook's face, and of course that rook can't take that pawn because the bishop is protecting it. Moving on, the rook shifts over. The purpose is that with that pawn move, it has now opened up the rook's eyes to see this pawn, who is currently vulnerable. So this rook shifts over here to defend that pawn. Next up, we have the queen coming in for an attack. Now, this is, setting up 2 pieces to hitting this pawn in a way, whereas the rook is still the only one defending it. But obviously, you're not going to give away your queen for a rook. So next up after this, we have the queen shifting over, and we will see this happen a lot. The queen tends to go kind of back and forth between these 2 pieces, or these 2 squares. White pushes up here. This is good. Just kind of lock down this position, make it so black can't crack open this position anymore, because these 2 pawns are both locked down in position. And this one could move ahead, but I mean, it would get squashed almost immediately. Once again, the queen kind of goes back there. Rook moves up. Queen moves back, rook moves up again. This is a funny little 2-step for me. I don't really know the inner workings of why this kind of thing would happen, but it is a funny little 1-2 step when obviously the rook could have just jumped all the way over there in the first place. Queen goes right back where it was before. Bishop slides over. Queen goes right back. Queen moves over once again, and now the knight opens up with a strike because obviously with this last bishop move, with this queen move, what we're looking at is a potential situation where on white's next turn, if they move this rook out of the way, well, now the queen can go ahead and strike this knight, and then king obviously cannot recapture because the bishop is also aiming down that exact same direction. So with that, the knight's going to jump out of the way and just out of that opportunity in general. And this is a fine thing to do because the pawn is still watching over this knight. But Fischer says, I don't care. This trade might seem like it's giving more value to my opponent than myself, but he's confident that he can clutch out the game anyway. So goes in for the capture, knight on rook, and then obviously the pawn recaptures just like that. And now the rook just grabs that pawn right back. So it was, a trade of a rook for a knight and a pawn. So technically a trade in favor of black in terms of just raw material, but in terms of white's positioning, once again, this is just opening up the position on the king side. Really, white is still fairly protected back here. We got a lot of defense going on, whereas black, it's starting to look a little scarier and a lot less tiles. Like, look at this right now. King can't move forward, and then if king moves here or here, there's a lot of pieces that can directly target that. So just not a lot of places for your knight to go or your king to go, which is never what you want as a chess player. Whereas white, looking pretty solid, right? It can move over here, 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 here. You got 4 positions and already still has a pawn just blocking that main vision cone, to use a Hitman term. All right, where were we? The king does shift over. I don't know if this is a great move necessarily because you still don't have these options open because the rook is covering that whole side of the board. Bishop flings back over here, which is an interesting idea. I guess I don't really know what is the purpose of this. You're covering your pawn. Maybe an idea would be, okay, if your pawn could get out of the way, and then it is kind of discovered check on the king. But I don't really see a position in which that pawn would be taken. So I don't know if I fully understand what's going on there. King shifts back into the corner. Queen moves over to this spot here. And then I believe that is where the game ended. I believe that this was a forfeit at this point in time. All right, so if we put this position into the engine, we'll see that black is going to try and do its best defense, but it's just going to break down. So queen can move there. Now rook can go for an incredibly aggressive position. The queen obviously can't quite take because none of these rooks are ready to recapture. Rook's going to move there. Queen's going to move into a position to throw a check in there. And look at this. Like, this is just total turtle techniques here. The black king is almost completely smothered at this point. All of the major pieces are in this small little quadrant. Pawn moves up, and the rook now decides to get out of the way, and that opens up a position. Because once again, like we had this position earlier, we were talking about how I don't know. Let's go all the way back to that position. Where was it? Yeah, the bishop had moved back to this square because in the event that this pawn could move out of the way, whether it's moving forward or maybe capturing or maybe getting captured and then going for a recapture, there's a potential discover check opportunity on aiming down the sights. And so it's funny that all these turns later, we're going to get to a position where that similar situation happens, but now it's actually the queen that is in the firing line rather than the king. He's shifted out of the way, but with that pawn move, opens up the bishop's eyes for the queen. And what's the queen to do? You can't move out of the way here because then the rook can just, that's a check. That's a checkmate even. You're not, that's an illegal move. You're not allowed to make that position. And what do? If you go try and take capture the bishop back, you're just going to get recaptured by the pawn. And anywhere else you go, you're going to get captured. If you go here, you're going to get captured by the rook. If you go here or here or here, yeah, once again, the bishop is locking you down. So the queen, it just has no way to keep herself alive here. So instead, what the try here is that the rook gets out of the way, but now the bishop can go in and take the queen, and then that just kind of that's going to swing the evaluation if it wasn't already. At least in terms of material, this game is like just gone now for black. The best opportunity, I guess, for black is to throw this. I don't even really understand why this move would be good in any sort of way, but anyway, the queen can recapture there, and no matter what happens here, like this is just a forfeit game for black at this point. No chance at recovering this one. if we have it in the other locations in the game, in almost all of the boards, where the queen and the rook are just pulled off of this board for white. So it's just an objectively worse position for white now. Your two major pieces are out of the way, the ones that were really throwing down some pressure on the opponent here. So this is not looking good for Team White anymore. And this is a situation where now we're thrown to this. And okay, this is a completely different game now than what happened in that World Chess Championship. We can't really say whose turn it is anymore. This is another fictional sort of match. So let's take a look at it from both angles. All right, so we have loaded up this game. We're going to say that is Black's move first here. This game is hugely in favor of Black now because you take away the queen and the rook, so it leads to a plus 14 in evaluation in terms of piece material value, whatever you want to call it, for Black in this position. And I think the first strike that would be thrown is that this pawn is completely susceptible. There's no one defending this. The bishop's not got its eyes on it, and neither does the rook. And so I think a great first move as Black would be to just go ahead and capture that pawn from there. We're not going to take a look at all of the moves of how this game could go. This is just such a drastically one position for Black that there's a lot of ways that you could look to chip this down. But there isn't like an immediate checkmate opportunity. Even like looking at the chess engine's eyes, there isn't like really just an immediate one or two quick moves that you can make to land a quick checkmate here. Because even still, like as we talked about with the proper game that happened, these Black rooks not really in great positions. It's awkward because like this rook here, or this pawn I should say, is technically vulnerable. So this rook does have a job to cover it, but you never really want your rook's primary purpose to be defending a pawn. So I don't know. I would think something like getting these rooks over onto these squares and just kind of aiming down the sights a little bit more. Shift the focus over to the side where the king is, or you could even look just with like overwhelming pressure, look to kind of break down this white defensive structure over here, get some pawns promoted, that kind of thing. The knight also not really in play right now. The two squares that the Black knight is protecting are these two, like an entrance point one for the rook, other things like that. But like the pawns are already doing that. So this is kind of useless moves. So these are kind of more going to be squares that you're going to use to move along the way and get into a better position. So yeah, definitely a hugely one position for Black. This is going to be kind of a game over situation. If we look at it from the perspective of White, if it's White's turn to move first, you do at least have an initial save of this pawn that's vulnerable. You can push him forward, and now the bishop has got his eyes on it. But let's just look at the computer's moves of this. You can see like how quickly this game can really break down and just how many unprotected pieces or how many vulnerabilities, or I guess really just how little pieces White has left to defend against all potential threats that Black could throw. So from here, we could push forward with the pawn. These are all considered to be the best moves by the computer in a fairly quick analysis here. Moving forward, you can see like already this position is breaking down a little bit. Queen's moving in, rook's doing a nothing sort of move. And like very quickly the Black is looking to threaten a piece promotion. Eventually we can offer a trade like that. But look at this, Black's going to get another queen on board. Yeah, sure, so is White, but Black can immediately retake it. And now, like, what are you going to do here? Like, this is just, you can even offer a trade of a queen for a rook because what's going to happen next? Like, you just got nothing for you. The rook's defending this position. King's in the corner. Rook locks it down. And there you go. You have a checkmate. So even with White having a move up, a head start, it still is going to be a lost position for sure if you take away those two pieces. And it's funny, when we do take away those two pieces, that being the white queen and the white rook, we can notice that, okay, those were the two pieces that on any other map, if there were pieces that were captured on the side of the board, those are the ones that they use. And I guess it's because, like, since in that map where you have the challenge and you're moving the two pieces, those are like a separate art asset from the rest of the chessboard. And so those are another thing they had in their toolkit that the environment artists, level designers could slap down for little extra details on the side. And it's funny that we didn't notice anyone where they just put an exorbitant amount, like they didn't just put like more than one queen, right? That wouldn't really make sense, obviously, but it's one of those things that could, in the peripheral vision, make sense if you're just trying to fill out the scene a little bit. So it's funny that that didn't happen at all. But it is notable that, like, oh, those are the two other art assets, the white rook, the white queen. Those exist outside the board, and we can slap those down, or they could slap those down, the level designers. Put them around as just little set dressing details, so kind of a fun little detail there. Lastly, what we have to do here is look at the position from Dartmoor, which had those pieces removed, but then it had a queen added over here up top. And so I don't think this is going to drastically change our position, but there are a couple interesting ways that this could go. So if it is white's move first here, we're in kind of an interesting position where it means that white had moved the queen into this very vulnerable position, and then black had made a move that was not capturing that queen. So that would be like a blunder. Like whatever move occurred right before this for black would definitely have to be a blunder. All right, so let's look at a couple variations for white to move. Let's say that the white queen is just going to try and get out of the way of fire. We're going to have a rook move, rook move, queen shifts over, knight gets out of the corner, still protected by this pawn, of course. Immediately this white pawn moves up, then the rook's going to go in for the pawn. It's going to be a trade here. Queen's going to take, but then the knight can retake, and then we're into like a slightly simplified position. Black is up a pawn and a knight at this point, so we don't need to play through the rest of this, but definitely if we just trade down as black, which is a good way to go about this, you're just going to come out on top with a lot more pieces to play with. So let's look at another variation in which, I don't know, let's say the white queen just goes for the trade here. Obviously, you'd recapture with the rook, and then we get into a position where this is still really in favor of black because obviously we're just up an entire rook. But let's see how this variation could move ahead. Really, white's just making some silly moves. You get black out. Rook's moving forward, but then we're eventually going to go for this trade. Trade down, sure, why not trade down? And once again, like rook, team black is just going to be ahead here with the pieces. And still, this pawn has just been such a deadly one in these analyses. And it's interesting that in the game, Spassky didn't have the opportunity to get that pawn any more forward, but like it being only 3 steps from promotion is kind of an imminent threat for a lot of these variations that we're looking at here. And then if we jump to it as black to play, let's say white had moved their queen here for some particular reason. That would not be a great move because, one, it's not threatening anything at all. Maybe, I guess, the reason would be that it captured a piece, but like considering that both the rooks and the queen are on the board, the best thing that you could have captured with this queen would be like a bishop or another knight. So that's obviously not a great trade. And for black in this case, I don't know, take your pick, rook or queen, recapture that, but you're going to now be up a huge amount. I would probably think to do a rook in this position because, as I've talked about a couple times, like I don't really like this position for these 2 rooks over in the corner. They're not really doing a whole lot. This one does have a job once again, but this one doesn't. It's just doing nothing. I guess it's throwing in a sight line here, but that piece is protected twice by both a pawn and a bishop. And so I think this is a great move here because it puts this rook in just a better position. There's a second defender on this pawn and just kind of gets it more in play, gives it more options closer to the side of the board that's going to be relevant where the kings are. And so once again, if we just look at this, like, I'll put these evaluation moves in the mix here. It's just too much pressure that black has, like this threat, once again, of promotion. Now the bishop's kind of got to go for this. And like, yeah, you'll take the promotion. Bishop's got to retake, but now you lost your bishop. Rook's got to come back, but another trade we can offer. And now look at this. I mean, black is just so dominantly ahead. Yeah, up 1 pawn, but then down a rook, a queen, and a knight. That is not a position you want to see. So this game's going to be coming to curtains pretty soon here. There you go. There we have it. We have now looked at every board state from Hitman World of Assassination and all the variations, the freelancer loading screen, and then kind of the World Championship game that the ICA final test was based off, and then the couple of variations that happened just because of funny happenstance around the way. It was really fun to see that this is the case, and it makes me wonder what other games have this sort of thing. One thing I didn't talk about earlier in the video is that I had this realization somewhat a few months ago when I was playing Alien Isolation for the first time and found like 4 or 5 chessboards in that game. And I noticed in that game that, oh, it's also the exact same chessboard placed around this facility, around the space station. And I don't know if that one or others are that we find in other games are kind of based off popular positions or, you know, depending on which video game developer you have. I'm sure some have like really good chess players on hand. Some maybe don't have any chess players around at all. So it's funny that I'm sure a lot of games you really just fake it and put the pieces in random positions and hope you don't notice. But it is funny that a game like this, I mean, they do have a challenge chess puzzle based around it, so it makes sense to base it a little bit in reality. But it's still a funny detail nonetheless. And let me know if there's other games that you've noticed or are curious about the chess positions of, because I'm sure there's a lot out there. Maybe that could be a topic for a future video. Either way, thank you for watching this one, and I'll see you next time.
Tremaine, are you still there? The knight takes rook. That's another one down. Do not let him turn this situation around on us.